get this working again. We're talking about the 9/11 conspiracy, and
in the Twin Towers came from two companies that managed U.S. government securities, Cantor Fitzgerald and Eurobrokers. There were three major security brokers in the World Trade Center: Cantor Fitzgerald, Eurobrokers, and Garbin Intercapital. At 8:46 on the morning of September 11th, Flight 11 flew directly into Marshall McLennan's secure computer room in the North Tower, right below the floor on which Cantor Fitzgerald was situated. Cantor Fitzgerald was the largest security dealer in the U.S. Shortly after that, a massive explosion went off just under the FBI offices in the North Tower on the 23rd floor. Fires were reported on the 22nd floor at 8:47. There were also explosions and subsequent fires reported at Garbin Intercapital on the 25th floor and in the basement of Tower 1 as well. Shortly thereafter, at 9:03, Flight 175 hit the South Tower right below the floors on which Eurobrokers was situated. In all three cases, the explosive, fiery destruction consumed the offices and the several floors above, destroying files and trapping victims inside. In the midst of all this, Building 6 was destroyed by an explosion that took place before either tower fell. This secondary explosion took out a portion of the building which just happened to include the El Dorado Task Force's offices. The El Dorado Task Force was an interagency money laundering watchdog group responsible for coordinating all major money laundering investigations in the U.S. In the immediate aftermath of September 11th, these groups would be redirected to investigate terrorist financing. Building 6 was located directly between the North Tower and World Trade Center Building 7. While large portions of World Trade Center 6 were gutted by explosions and later by falling debris from the North Tower, the building itself did not suffer a global symmetric collapse at near freefall acceleration as did Buildings 1, 2, and 7. FEMA photographer and 9/11 whistleblower Kurt Sunfield took some interesting pictures of the U.S. Customs Vault in the basement of World Trade Center 6, which was found completely empty and left with the door wide open. All of its contents appear to have been looted during the attacks. There is also evidence that gold was being looted from the vaults beneath World Trade Center 4. There were several early reports of a 10-wheel truck packed with stolen bullion caught fleeing World Trade Center 5 when the vehicle had become stuck on a collapsed ceiling brace, forcing the driver to flee the scene. Many researchers have stumbled across one or two of these anomalies from time to time: the empty vaults, the secondary explosions, the fireproofing upgrades on the exact floors coinciding with failure and impact in the towers, the suspicious power downs and evacuation drills, the World Trade Center tenants and security firms like AIG, Marsh & McLennan, and Kroll, and their close ties with the intelligence community, etc., etc. These anomalies are not unrelated, but nevertheless became lost inside the chaos of that September morn, the aftermath, and subsequent cover-ups. Okay, so what does all this mean? Overall, a critical mass of brokers from the major government security brokerages in the Twin Towers had to be eliminated to create chaos in the government securities market. A situation needed to be created wherein $240 billion of covert securities could be electronically cleared without anyone asking questions, which happened when the Federal Reserve declared an emergency and invoked its emergency powers that very afternoon. On September 14th, the Securities and Exchange Commission declared a national emergency and for the first time in U.S. history invoked its emergency powers under the Securities Exchange Act Section 12K and eased regulatory restrictions for clearing and settling security trades for the next 15 days. These changes would have allowed the estimated $240 billion in covert government securities to be cleared upon maturity without the standard regulatory controls around identification of ownership. The towers needed to be demolished to create a big enough mess that the illicit activities taking place behind the scenes that morning could be hidden in the confusion of that day. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about who did it and how. 9/11 whistleblower Richard Andrew Grove was a software salesperson for a company called Silverstream. Silverstream's technology was on the cutting edge of internet solutions, offering software to web-enable the critical business functions of Fortune 500 companies. basically integrating and making available on the web the disparate legacy applications and mainframes while simultaneously streamlining workflow and traditional paper processes, with an end result being a lower cost of operation and more efficient transactions. Silverstream had built internet transactional and trading platforms for Merrill Lynch, Deutsche Bank, Bankers Trust, Alex Brown, and Morgan Stanley, to name a few. Leading up to 9/11, Silverstream was designing specialized accounting software for a major client, Marsh & McLennan. Marsh is the world's largest insurance brokerage and was located right below Cantor Fitzgerald in the North Tower. Approximately 295 Marsh employees were murdered that morning, along with other innocent victims and employees who either knew too much or too little about their chosen work environment. But most importantly, Silverstream provided a specific type of connectivity that was used to link AIG and Marsh & McLennan, the first two commercial companies on the planet to employ this type of transaction. What then were Marsh and AIG doing, and why did they need to leverage technologies that no other commercial entity on the face of the earth needed to use to conduct business? The recovered hard drives from the World Trade Center, combined with Richard Grove's testimony, give us some intriguing clues. Grove discovered that Silverstream was overbilling Marsh to the tune of $7 million extra for fictitious and unneeded hardware. He also became aware of an exploitable flaw in the accounting software that had been sold to a variety of Marsh's clients and partners. When he brought this up to his superiors at Silverstream and others at Marsh, he was told to keep quiet and not to worry about it. But other friends of his at Marsh were also getting concerned and began documenting what was going on and raising concerns within the company. At last, they were finally granted a hearing with one of Marsh's high-ranking executives and were told to bring all their evidence to a hearing scheduled for 8:30 a.m. on September 11, 2001, on the 93rd floor. The high-ranking member of Marsh, who Grove did not name, would participate via teleconference from the safety of his home, while Marsh employees and potential whistleblowers, Gary Lasko, Catherine Lee, Ken Rice, Richard Brewhart, and John Oltzhopper, would die in the meeting room in the North Tower with all their evidence when American Airlines Flight 11 would impact that very section of the building.
All right. Who have I got here on the line? You've been listening to the show all the time. 918 area code. Who do we have here? Hello, speak up. I can't hear you. Alright, too bad. Alright. Thought we had a caller, but evidently we didn't, or they didn't have enough intelligence to turn their microphone on. So,
Richard Grove fortunately got stuck in traffic that morning and didn't make it. Computer hard drives recovered from the World Trade Center show a spike in suspicious transfers that took place within the World Trade Center as the 9/11 attacks were unfolding. Richard Grove is convinced that these suspicious money transfers were performed electronically using Silverstream software, and that the overbilling of Marsh was hush money for the operations. It would certainly have helped clear up that $240 billion in securities and make it look like any of those companies might have done it. The recovered hard drives and financial transactions from 9/11 all show clear evidence that something was going on that morning. Marsh's CEO at the time was Jeffrey Greenberg, the son of Maurice Greenberg of AIG. Most insurance companies were hurting badly in late 2001 after $40 billion in insurance settlements had been paid out for the devastation caused by the 9/11 attacks. Yet one insurance company did not suffer quite the same losses as the other companies did. American International Group, or AIG as it turns out, is much more than an insurance company. With its long ties to the intelligence community, AIG was founded by OSS operative Cornelius B. Starr, 2 R's, the uncle of Clinton's friend Kenneth Starr. AIG currently operates a complex network of shell companies and other entities which operate internationally and have been used for clandestine intelligence gathering and other covert activities for decades. The company that ran security in the World Trade Center, Kroll Associates, was owned by AIG. The CEO of AIG on 9/11 was a guy named Maurice Greenberg, who was actually nominated for the position of Director of Central Intelligence after he authored a report for the Council on Foreign Relations, of which he's a high-ranking member, where he advocated that FBI and Drug Enforcement Agency agents operating abroad should not be allowed to act independently of either the ambassador or the CIA, lest pursuit of evidence or individuals for prosecution cause major foreign policy problems or complicate ongoing intelligence and diplomatic activities. Of course, this type of policy is essentially a continuation of things like Executive Order 12333 and the CIA-assisted Contra cocaine trafficking that went on as an immediate result. These backdoor agreements open the floodgates for government drug money laundering and narco-trafficking. Former LAPD narcotics detective turned whistleblower Michael Rupert has written a series of excellent articles documenting AIG's involvement in drug money laundering, undoubtedly revealing yet another motive for the invasion of Afghanistan, a country which currently produces over 90% of the world's heroin supply. Drugs are arguably the most profitable commodity on the entire international market, and drug money was undoubtedly a motive behind the invasion of Afghanistan and consequently the 9/11 attacks. While companies like AIG launder the drug money for big banks, the actual drug production and trafficking can be traced back to the same Iran-Contra affiliates like Richard Armitage and Frank Carlucci. Unfortunately, that rabbit hole is a bit too deep and off-topic to get into here. I will mention that DynCorp was heavily involved, as well as Stewart Air Force Base in upstate New York, where the two flights out of Boston crossed paths simultaneously and shut off their transponders before making their way to the Twin Towers. Many researchers believe that the MENA operation was moved to Stewart Air Force Base after Barry Seal got whacked. Richard Armitage was the Deputy Secretary of State on 9/11, and according to whistleblower Michael Springman, he was the man responsible for granting visas to 15 out of 19 of the 9/11 hijackers, allowing them to enter the U.S. and pursue flight training. Frank Carlucci is the chairman of the Carlyle Group and was in Washington, D.C. on 9/11, having just met with George H.W. Bush and the brother of Osama bin Laden on Carlyle Group business. Frank Carlucci was also the chairman of BDM International, a company that served as a front for State Department black operations. Frank Carlucci's employees at BDM International left to take charge of Stratesec, the World Trade Center and airport security firm. Corporate Operating Officer Barry W. McDaniel, an ex-military expert in logistics and materials distribution, and CEO Wirt Dexter Walker III, who is a distant Bush cousin from the Herbert Walker line, with an extensive history of managing CIA front companies. Marvin Bush, the president's brother, was also a board member at Stratesec. Although Stratesec maintained contracts for security upgrades which were set to expire on September 11, 2001, they were not the company officially charged with World Trade Center security. This role was assigned to a risk management firm called Kroll Associates. Kroll's chairman, Jerome Hauer, was a longtime personal friend of ex-FBI counterterrorism expert John O'Neill, and was responsible for O'Neill's appointment as head of security for the World Trade Center just a few days prior to the 9/11 attacks. O'Neill was the world's leading expert on Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda, and was a potential 9/11 whistleblower with hard evidence of White House complicity in the protection and shielding of the 9/11 hijackers from all means of federal investigation. Al-Qaeda hijacking suspects were flagged by the Able Danger terrorist tracking program, which was also shut down by the White House. Able Danger whistleblower Anthony Schaefer claims the U.S. government destroyed over 6 terabytes of data related to Able Danger, which he also claims identified 9/11 ringleader Mohammed Atta as early as February of 2000. Those atop the chain of command in the White House, military, and intelligence establishment deliberately ignored all the warning signs of an impending attack. A clever strategy of plausible deniability which also served to portray those in charge as incompetent rather than complicit. In every major head throughout the chain of command on 9/11, from NORAD to the military, we see a repeated theme of complicity through negligence or incompetence. After 9/11, failure and incompetence was rewarded, and whistleblowers were silenced. Combined with the fact that 6 corporations control 90% of the media, and CIA operations like Mockingbird admit to taking over and subverting our U.S. media, we can understand how such a big lie could have been kept from the American public for so long. But
all right, let me see if this is working here. I've got a lot of, I've had a lot of problems with my computer today. Gordon, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right, Gordon Duck just happened to show up here on my show. I've got a few minutes left here on the on my one of my shows here, and let me just ask you, Gordon, this whole Connecticut thing, this whole shooting. I mean, we've got more children sacrificed. There were children sacrificed at Waco. There were children sacrificed at Oklahoma City. Was this another sacrifice? And some of your reporters, one of your reporters, are talking about this being a Mossad hit squad.
Two of them are Mike Harris, who you know is former Republican Party finance chairman, and Dr. James Fetzer of the University of Minnesota. Those two say it is. Since we published their findings, we have now been subjected to extensive attacks from, well, I will tell you, Israeli-controlled mainstream media, and it is not wild conjecture that based on the nature and ferocity of the attacks, that it's an indication of extreme suspicion that we hit something, that we hit pay dirt here, that their conjecture was correct. I would look on that as a strong confirmation. The basis one would have for asking the question is that there was so much cover-up. 2 shooters, 3 shooters, it's been on all of the news. The lying, weapon locked in the trunk of the car. We have reason to believe from Russian intelligence that they have satellite imagery of 3 people entering the school, a kill team. We have reason to believe that the mother and son were dead the day before and had absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with it. Matter of fact, there are so many inconsistencies that there are lists everywhere. Never has a cover-up fallen apart so quickly with so many people as this. It's the first time that social media, the internet, and mainstream news, those who are intelligent and decent within mainstream news, and some are showing up, the first time they've worked together and totally debunked what is a very much an act of terrorism against the people of the United States.
Now, I also saw, and put this up on my website, that China is reacting to this and saying we need gun control here. I mean, on the same day, on the same day.
Everybody wants the American people unarmed. I assure you, there's quite another plan going on there. And I was on with J.B. Campbell yesterday with Mike, and we're not going to disarm. It's not going to happen. And I'm not going to be silenced by a police department in Connecticut. And we've had that threat.
I have played that
threat.
One is,
if you violate my First Amendment rights, you get to learn about my Second Amendment rights.
I played that, suddenly giving out, speculating, or anybody that's using social media to speculate here is guilty of misinformation. I didn't know. When did they make misinformation a crime, and why haven't they arrested?
I will tell you that I have on Facebook 135,000 featured posts involving my articles. 135,000.
And by the way,
I have on the internet 1.9 million references to my article in Press TV. It's now on Veterans Today. 1.9 million. Let's shut down the internet too. And it isn't just me. Bradley's writing about it. CBS News, Fox, they're all picking up on it. There are no secrets here.
How could they get the whole police department there in Connecticut to cover this up? I mean,
because they've been trained by Israelis, and they may well be complicit. We believe they couldn't have gotten into the school to hide the boy's body without the police department's help. That's conjecture. It's extremely educated conjecture.
And
we believe that J.P. Reddy wouldn't have been killed without police help.
Yeah, I get these Jewish trolls on my site accusing me and Mike Harris of backing J.T. Harris and backing a Nazi. And anytime somebody calls me a Nazi...
Sorry, he was... not only was Reddy not a Nazi, the only person he knew in the Nazi, the National Socialist movement, is a close friend of John McCain's. And if you remember, I published a photograph about 5 weeks ago of this guy traveling with McCain. We had him at the Charlotte, North Carolina airport together, his arm around McCain. That was the guy that met with Reddy. So Reddy is guilty of meeting with a close friend of Senator John McCain. Now, for that, he may have answered with his life. Never meet with friends of John McCain. Never do it.
I shook hands. They're probably the only thing I regret about the president.
You shook hands with John McCain.
I know, possibly the only thing I regret about the presidential campaign of 1996. But as I was shaking his hand, I looked at him and I said, you know, why are you supporting, I think it was Graham he was stumping for. He supported NAFTA and GATT, and he looked at me.
Why did he sabotage the recovery of live prisoners of war held by North Vietnam? Why did he work for them and sabotage their recovery? And I can get you the chief. Colonel James Hankey was head of POW recovery, working out of Thailand, special forces officer, who is my chief of staff. He had live sightings, reported live sightings, what he considered top-ranked intelligence, and this is a former NATO G2, former attaché to Israel. He said he had solid proof, and McCain had it all buried. We may have abandoned 1,200 vets over there. Death.
I refer to John McCain as the way his fellow prisoners of war referred to him. Songbird McCain. And while I had him by the hand, he looked me in the eye and said, I don't care if all the factories, my son's an engineer, I don't care if all the factories move to Mexico. And they threatened me to, if I used that, if I reported on that. And of course I reported on that. But,
well, you're pre-disastered anyway.
What?
We call it pre-disastered. You've been gotten so many times. They've been after you for years.
Yeah, they certainly didn't like me starting the militia.
Oh, but I will tell you, Camel is really outspoken. My heavens. He was going to start a roundup. He was going to be filling camps up. Campbell's quite a guy.
I like him. He's been on my show. There's somebody else that I would like to meet with and talk to that's done pretty good work. I want to know if you know him. Jim Stone. I've got 3 of his articles linked.
No, I don't.
All right. He's a good man. He actually he was going to become a Jew. He went to the Jewish synagogue.
A Stone is usually a Stein or a Steinberg.
He was going to do this, and he went there and went for almost 2 years to become a Jew. And he went to across the street to another synagogue to listen to a rabbi. And the rabbi asked him, "Do you have any? Is there any strangers here?" And pointed at him. Said, "What about him? What about him?" And they said, "No, he's all right. He's all right. He's been with us for 2 years. He's okay." And so the rabbi went on to talk about the Kol Nidre, and Stone was so disgusted with this. He said it was a prayer to the devil, and he dropped out of the synagogue, and they tried to kill him after that. And now he's put out some good stories about Connecticut and everything else. So,
I'm one of those anti-religious types, but and I have a good 50-cent education, as much as those state universities can do anyway. And it's my belief that most religions are satanic in nature. I look in the military how at the Presidio, Michael Aquino established within the military, the Church of Satan is preeminent. There are within the military as many as 17% of the officer corps, that's the number I've been given, are in Satanist-related cults. 17%. The Nazi Party only had 6% of the German officer corps. The Communist Party only had 2.3% of the Soviet officer corps. And we have Satanists and Pentecostals, Dominionists, which are all Satan-based religions, including, you know, at a certain level of Freemasonry, and there are a lot of wonderful Freemasons out there, so I don't mean this as a criticism for people that do a lot of good, but you hit a level in Freemasonry, and out comes the horned goat, Baphomet, the Phoenician satanic god. Freemasonry is a satanic religion at a point. You know, certainly not at the one where most Americans participate, but it's there. Christianity was established as a Satanist religion by Constantine. And then, of course, for the next 400 years, the Bishop of Rome, the Bishop of Aleppo, the Bishop of Jerusalem fought a war among themselves to try to maintain some Christian aspect to Christianity, which remained in the Eastern Church, but the Western churches gave up any form of Christianity and moved to a pagan investor religion. But you got to do a little studying to pick up on that. When Christianity was destroyed, the last Christians in the West were killed during the Ninth Crusade as Albigensians. Since then, there has been no Christian church in the West.
I have said, Gordon, and I'm speaking with Gordon Duff here for a few minutes. I'd like to have you on next week, since the end of the world didn't happen today.
No, it may happen. I'm waiting around here. I'm telling you, I've got, you know, I have severe arthritis. I'm a former boxer, and you get beaten to death. So not only am I missing brain cells, but my hands look like they're quite a mess. They're very large, but they're they're broken to pieces. And I spent yesterday rebuilding an infield 4 Type 1, doing a restoration job on it with a buffing wheel, and got poisoned by bluing. Never hot blew a gun without wearing some sort of ventilation, I'll tell you.
Now, I said about Constantine, about the Council of Nicaea. I said...
Yeah, that's it. In order to get rid of all... In order to create a religion based on the teachings of the Apostle Paul, who was never an apostle, and you're actually talking to someone who's been to Ephesus, which is the Turkish town of Seljuk, by the way, but who's, you know, if you look at the photographs of the town, you'll find that I'll be the listed photographer, or my wife will, for any of the really good things done there. But the idea is to get rid of any of the real gospels that were first century and replace them with Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and edited versions of those to create heaven and hell, the virgin birth, the resurrection, and a hierarchical church.
I said Jesus was the first rebel. He fought against the bankers. He kicked the bankers out of their thing. Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. But they kicked him up to God, made him equal to God in the Council of Nicaea, because he didn't want men like you and I aspiring to be the kind of man he was. Now, maybe he, you know, I believe that that his words are good. That if that happens.